Okay, hey, on today's show, we're talking about AI technologies, no, excuse me, AI voice technologies, and how do they affect and what can they do for our conversational SEO? So think about technologies like advancements with ElevenLabs, Hume, which I've recently been using, has been great, Siri, Alexa, and so many more, and how they're going to change and enhance what conversational SEO strategies look like. And then, what opportunities or challenges do they present for businesses that are aiming to optimize for voice in 2025? Like, how do you pivot towards that? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is the Daily AI Show. Today is March 11th, 2025, and I am joined by Beth, Jimmy, and I'm Brian. And yeah, sorry about the cold opening there. So it happens. So welcome, guys. And yeah, this is an interesting topic that I'm really curious to hear what you guys think on. Obviously we have so many people who are marketing who are, always trying to figure out, even if you're not marketing, you're just a small business, you're just trying to figure out, how do I work in a future where traditional SEO strategies may or may not work? And not that we haven't gone through these evolutions before. SEO has changed drastically since I remember messing around with it in about 2014. That was about well, that was a few years. I was probably earlier than that. I opened the CrossFit in 2011, and I guess somewhere in there is when I really started, obviously, yeah, well, I have a business. I probably should try to promote it now and get these SEO words. And that's probably honestly the first time I even remember talking about it or trying to learn about it. Because, you put on that small business hat and you go, okay, now I have to learn all the things. And it's a little bit easier today with AI, but also AI is changing the game. So what does that mean for not just small businesses, obviously any size business? Specifically today, when it comes to these voice searches, how is that going to change how businesses have to react to that? Or do they? So what do you guys think?
So I'm thinking that I'm thinking that for me, I probably do most of my searches still using typing, but voice is getting closer. And the upgrade that we're expecting from Alexa, right? The plus upgrade, which I know based on looking at it, um, you can set it so that you are actually having a back and forth kind of conversation. And you could sort of have a back and forth conversation now because if you say thank you at the end of her setting the timer, she will sometimes respond, right?
Right.
That's not really a back and forth kind of SEO based conversation, like, "Hey," and I would also say that, yeah, it's just not you. Um, the
Just say echo. That's what I do. I refer to the A name as echo, and that solves that. Yeah.
so yes, the echo sometimes says, "Hey, I have a product that I think would be interesting for you. Do you wanna hear about it?" But
Mhm.
that conversation doesn't become like, "Well, tell me why about me you think this," right? Like, "What do you I'm interested. I would love to have a conversation based on what you know about me." I mean, you're wiretapping my living room, right?
You-
So, what are the things that are, that you think this is a really good sale for me? And those kinds of things can be really helpful, I think. And I think that's the world that we're moving toward, and I'm not sure we're ready for it. Because is that my friend who always sets my laundry timer for me now recommending this? Like, what kind of word of mouth stuff does this become in my sense of, like, someone that I talk to, often who's helpful for me is making a recommendation for me?
And that probably goes towards like the idea of, long tail keywords, which, is one of those terms that you end up learning along the way of SEO. And it's okay if anybody listening to the show isn't like experts in SEO. I'm not. I don't know. I think Jimmy and Beth probably work on it a little more than I do, but it's okay. You don't need to know that to have this conversation. It's really just about when you think about what you just said, Beth. I'm walking through my house now. I'm even more now so detangled or decoupled from maybe a large computer screen where I am right now. Currently, right now, I'm sitting at a desk. I have my very comfortable two monitors. This is my safe space. This is my happy spot because I can do a lot of work here. But there is a future here where me sitting down to a computer to do research for I'll give you an example. From my house, we went through a long process of trying to find a new couch, but it didn't have to be a new couch. We would have happily have bought the right couch from Facebook Marketplace. I'm actually happy to do that. Ultimately, it was a difference of $200 or something like that, and we found the couch that we really felt like was perfect, and it was on Amazon, it was new, but that wasn't necessarily where we're going. It was this long, like, several month process. We didn't need a new couch right that second. It wasn't like ours was broken, but it was something we were working towards. As I'm researching that and knowing that I don't necessarily have to do that from the computer or my phone anymore, and it might just be in conversation, and I might just be doing the dishes. Sometimes I'll just throw on music with the echo if I'm doing dishes because I know it's gonna take me about 2 or 3 songs. I love music, whatever. But now is there a world where I go, "Hey, Echo, let's pick back up the conversation about the couches." And it's like, "Sure, based on your history, your chat history, this is where we sorta left off. Do you want me to go do," and this is impossible today, but do you want me to do a quick, search real quick on Facebook Marketplace to see if there's anything new in your area? That would be local pickup only because that was something that was maybe a qualifier for me, okay? And now we're having this conversation and it's researching and I'm like, "Well, I don't know if I want memory foam. That doesn't sound like isn't that gonna be hot?" And then it's like, "Well, it could be, and you are in Florida, and, like, this is something, and you might see divots and yada, 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 yada," right? We could have a whole conversation about couches. But that's not the point. What I mean is, like, is that what we're really talking about? And does my question maybe to you, Jimmy, is, does that really fundamentally change anything when it comes to SEO? Because SEO really is about Google's been doing this for years, about putting quality information. That's how it fights back against the spray and pray or the AI-ification of Google, which is let me just throw 1,000 blogs on there because now I can and it only takes me 5 minutes. But Google has always said, no, no, it's about the quality of that. Well, if that's still the case and any of these AI voice agents are leaning on that, wouldn't you still have to make sure as a business that if I was selling couches, that I was being really descriptive and probably more so than ever before about the couch, maybe where it was made, if that's important, synthetic fibers, natural fibers, the whole thing. Is that really any different, do you think, Jimmy, from where we currently are now?
Well, I think when we're talking about this subject, there's two key things that we need to focus on, and the first one is this is a larger question about AI and SEO and how SEO is currently done, like you said, by Google, and that process, and how AI is going to change that. And then the second question is how does the voice component or the voice interaction, that behavior with the user, or in this case, the consumer, going to buy the product or learn about the subject or look at your service, how those two things interact and are going to guide how things are going to change for SEO in general. Now we've already seen that AI in our normal quote unquote search options are already changing things, right? In Google, if you're looking at the AI generated search results, we're already using Perplexity for searches. It's built in. Search GPT is now built into the main ChatGPT experience. So what are the key takeaways of how SEO needs to adapt, or whoever wants to get the word out, because that's essentially what SEO is for, is like, oh, look at my stuff. What are the changes, the integral changes that need to happen to make the AI SEO more relevant for my things, right? And we haven't seen a lot of like hard specifics about that. Right now, we're still sort of leaning on what our traditional SEO aspects are: keywords, backlinks, all of that kind of stuff. I think that's a larger question that we'll have to take a look at, because I think with huge changes of how the internet will function and information distribution will function, that completely changes that. Now, Focusing on the voice component, the voice interaction, we're looking at something like I forget what study it was, but they're saying like 58% or 60% of searches are going towards using some sort of voice interaction or component. And recently, we've heard about the tech and the service coming out of the Sesame, right? And how that has been blowing people away because of how natural and engaging that voice layer sounds like. And you mentioned Hume, and Hume is supposed to be that emotional layer, where to make any AI interaction, more feasible and more natural and things like that. So people will be speaking to their AI agent more often, and it'll be the agent that's doing the work, right? It's the agent gonna go grab the information. So imagine, we've seen things like Gibberlink, where AI talks to AI in a far more efficient manner because it doesn't have to use English, or it doesn't have to use a spoken language, human language, I should say. And so if the AI agents are the ones doing all the searches, and your agent for your company, selling your services, is doing the work of connecting with those agents, then that's a completely different workflow or pipeline for SEO, right? Your agent's going to be talking to the other agent saying, "Hey, this is why this is important." Like you said, it's like, "Oh, do we need to have extra keywords or more descriptive?" There might be a robot text file, or the robot TXT file might completely change to be like, "Hey, if you're an AI agent, go look at this compressed information here." The searching agent can then take that information, much like a transcript, and break it down into the salient points for relevancy, and then feed that back to its user, right? And as AI agents grow in their memory, and they learn more about their user, becoming more personalized, those elements of the person searching for it is going to inform where the ranking is. So this goes to a much bigger question, I think, of how the internet is going to disseminate information when everyone's got their own personal AI.
Yeah, I think it's a solid point. By the way, Carl joined us as well. And you had me thinking, Jimmy, because you were talking about sort of like that robot.txt file. I was thinking about that too. We already have sitemaps, and they help with obviously finding the structure of a website. Something I run into all the time right now. The perfect use case. I was literally this morning. I was helping one of my clients. Um, Make a companion custom GPT for some documentation, just to kind of keep it vague. Um, that documentation, like a website, was in parts heavy with image, or it had like left and right justified. And I often find, I mean, maybe we won't have to do this forever. I mean, OCR doesn't fix it. There are some other tools. Actually, Mistral, by the way, is actually getting better and better at reading PDFs and things like that. So maybe this is a short-term problem, but I do find that if you want AI in general to do really well, you have to go with like schemas. You have to go with structures. You have to go with things that it clearly understands the orders of importance on. If that's a product category, it's about knowing that on the backside, and maybe that is a TXT file. Maybe it's not necessary down the road. But if I want my Echo to properly understand when I go to Beth's website and she's selling, these widgets, and I have a question, and I'm like, I'm standing in my kitchen. I'm not even visually being able to see it. And I'm like, well, what makes this widget that Beth sells from this widget? Well, that information has to, number one, be precise. It has to be exact. It has to be cited, because Beth needs that to be cited. We can't have AI making a generalization, truncating, summarizing to the point where it loses the original value, because that'll actually hurt Beth's business. So the question then becomes, well, does it all have to be laid out? And how do companies have to make sure that when this AI agent for lack of a better term, but any of these tools, any of these human tools, when they go to source that information from Beth's website for me, how are we ensuring that that information is coming across accurately to me? And then I'm not getting some sort of like watered down version, because we know that AI likes to shortchange a lot, especially in the chatbots where it likes to just, there's days where it'll give you pages and you're like, no. And then others days where it'll truncate and you're like, also no. Sometimes I need the exact information, like a RAG system. So it'll be interesting, like how it plays that. But back to your original point, I mean, Carl, we'd love to hear your point here too. Doesn't it just come back to, if Beth is going to create her website, she's got a new novel idea and she's selling these widgets and she has to create a website. Ultimately, isn't Beth going to do the best by using AI to help write very descriptive, heavy information on all her products about all the things, and just essentially, whether that's publicly visible or it's on the backside, it could be scraped, that is information that she would want to make sure it exists, plus all the blogs, plus all the user reviews. Those, I think user reviews are going to be massive in the future for ratings and rankings and stuff. Did other people find Beth's website helpful? That kind of stuff, right? Um, is she,
But that's the thing, right? What
what is?
constitutes a user review? And, like, so
Oh, I don't
does
know. Yeah,
will AI distinguish between the user reviews that I have on my widget site that are actually testimonials that I customized and sought specific and chose them specifically versus the thread on Reddit that is all about the widgets that I sell or something like that. Carl, I know you've done a bunch of thinking about this. Yeah, what are your thoughts in terms of SEOing for voice?
Um, well, I think there's a couple things that we've done. Like we've built a couple prototypes. We're working with a couple clients to not necessarily from an SEO perspective, more so we believe the way that people interact online, businesses specifically with businesses, business to consumer, and so on, and now business to agent. The more specific, more on the former is um, it's going to be easier to talk to a business, right? You have a lot of new tools like Blend, like Vappy, having to answer customer questions, and a lot of people are putting that component into it. But it's like, well, it's easier for me to just talk to a business. Let's say the 70-80% repetitive questions that you always talk, what's your price? What's your product? And once you have the multimodal kind of fixed or much better, then if you sell a tangible product, they're like, oh, what's wrong with this product? Or how come it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing? You can just, share your screen or turn on your camera and showcase it. So there's a lot of interaction in terms of the voice component. That's what we really like. 0 to 60 is really a big believer in that because it's just easier. And how can you make the interaction between businesses and consumers like decrease the friction? How can you make it easier than if people want to click and scroll and swipe, cool. But if it's easier to interact, and we've already seen it, if you actually deploy just a normal text chat bot on landing pages, the ones we've deployed, people use them more than actually scrolling, and the time on site goes down, but then we see more questions on the actual chatbot itself. So we believe the hypothesis is if you add a voice component, the time on site will go even further down because now they can just easily have a conversation, dependent on use case, obviously. But that's easier for people to do. You just have to change the behavior, and the way the website is laid out has to be changed. Now, if you switch it for now, let's talk about the SEO component. My question has always been, cool, everyone's talking about, hey, let's try to rank number one, or right, that one want to rank number one. Well, like, so what if you rank number one?
right.
How often do people actually will click on that number one thing to get to, unless it's like a very specific navigational or transactional search, right? If there's like, I want to buy red shoes from Nike, even Nike better show, like Nike will show up and you go to Nike. But if it's more of an informational search, I think it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not clicking on your site because I get the answer. So I think it's more from an SEO perspective, the navigational and the high intent commercial transactional intent. I think that's where people really have to focus on. And then you better, like, from a content side, I think that's where you have to really focus, because I know it's a big shift from try to get as many eyeballs onto your site based on the SEO, then you hit them with lead forms and pop-ups and all that stuff to keep them on your site. But it's like, okay, this is where more of the marketing thing. I think the brand plays much a bigger piece into it now, because people are searching not off Google and into different places depending on different things, right? Um, TikTok, Instagram, um, at like large language models. So different places they'll search. And then from a voice component, I think that's I don't know if you all remember when Alexa and Siri first came out. That was the big thing. It's like, oh, everyone's gonna go voice, and all the big time marketing influencers suddenly just started pumping out, "Hey, you got to work on voice and stuff." But outside of maybe the Alexa announcement, it all sucks. Like, and right now Alexa isn't very good anyway, right? Like, and then Siri's what, 2 years away, and that's the two biggest devices outside of Google Home, I guess, of whoever has that too. So I don't know yet, and I don't see the big shift necessarily as much as some people make it out to be.
Well, and this is also part of where, LLMs being the most probable is it is a problem in this context, right? We've said it before, but I'm not sure if people know. If you ask an LLM for a random number and it doesn't build a randomizer in code and run it, you will likely get the number 7, because 7 is the most probable answer to give me a random number. It isn't a random number, right?
Mm.
So, and I tried to find it. Ethan Mollick wrote, at some point, like, in the last 6 months, I'm gonna say, that, that he had noticed that, and I don't remember which LLM, I'm guessing it was ChatGPT, but it could have been Perplexity. They preferred a particular florist, right?
Oh,
We
I see.
don't we don't know why it preferred that. We don't
Mhm.
know why it preferred Delve, right? Like, there are things that happen within LLMs that we're not really sure about, and that is some black box SEO right there. In addition, how many people actually do the research, right? You get 3 suggestions from AI in text. All of them have a link. Do you, go beyond the second one? Right? Are you clicking the first one to look? Are you going to the second one to look? How many people now let's take that a step back. Now you don't even get the links in the way that you're interfacing with it. It's just like, "Hey, this is the top recommendation." Um, and do I then I come out of the voice conversation, I go into the text conversation that was transcribed out of it, and it has a link. Do I now go and do that? And I think the majority of people do not.
Uh, Majority of people do not. Yeah, I guess so. I guess you're right. I mean, I think this is like sort of what you're saying too, both of you guys, Carl and Beth. Like, it's also just changing. Like, I look at my daughter, and so much of her suggestions on clothes and stuff would absolutely come from TikTok. Absolutely. I mean, Instagram probably too, to a certain extent, but TikTok, she's watching what people that she trusts in their style make recommendations, and I wouldn't even call them necessarily influencers. I guess they are influencing her, purchase or whatever. But just the other day, she needed a white dress. And then she's like, "Dad, I need it for this weekend for something, but I will also use the same white dress for graduation in May." Right? Great. So she come to me in the office and she said, "Oh, I have it." And I said, "Oh, go talk to mom, and mom will help you do the checkout for that," or whatever it was. And then I don't know, a couple days went by, whatever. And I said, "Hey, did you ever order a dress?" She goes, "No, no. I already found a different one on TikTok that I like even more. And I think that's the one I'm going to go with. And then mom's going to help me get to the website to get to checkout to pay, blah, blah, blah." And so, like, for her, that's a very natural thing. And I've always talked about this too, even going back several years, much more likely to be in the car and just go, "Hey, phone, what is this?" and talk to it naturally. And I think some of this too with SEO is there's looking at it as at least for me, a 47-year-old who's looking in and going, "Well, how much different am I going to change my ways?" And I'm just like anybody else. I have my ways of doing Google and stuff. But then you look at a much younger generation, you go, "Yeah, they're kind of already there. They're already moving in that direction. They're already thinking about how to make purchases in their life in a much different way than I did, which was, hey, if I go to Google and I put in a really good keyword search, I will get 5 potential results and I will just quickly move through those 5 potential results." And I think you guys are right. Like, that's not really the future. That's not, people aren't going to necessarily need that anymore. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud, but it's clearly changing. I'm watching it change in my house and I can see the difference of how my daughter would naturally interact versus something that I would. And her inclinations to do it are much faster in the process than me. And I'm sure I'll get there, but the younger generation is already there and is already very comfortable with it. So as these technologies get better, and Beth, you're right about the black box. I'm not sure how you fix that, other than if it's like this LLM plus RAG system that we kind of put together these days, right? Where we're like, no, you specifically have to quote a document here, but you could be a little creative over here. It's going to have to be some hybrid of that in order to bring back, because businesses are going to revolt against that. They're not going to be friendly with Google if Google is bringing back black box types SEO answers that aren't supporting the business. Their ad revenue is going to go to nothing, you know? And that's going to be a huge problem for Google because their ad revenue is such a massive, massive part of their business. So surely Google's in it to try to help the businesses because they want to continue to get the ads, whether those are voice activated ads or not, which is what I would imagine you'll get, is that you'll be talking to your Echo Plus in the kitchen and several months to a year down the road, and it will give me suggestions, but it might also say, "Hey, by the way, here's a sponsored suggestion from so-and-so." And it'll tell me it's sponsored, just like Google would. It's not going to try to hide it, but it's like, "Here's the sponsor suggestion. They actually have a sale going on right now. Do you want to learn more about that first?" That's an ad, right? Like how I just think that's how we're going to hear it differently. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, it's funny because what popped in my head is like, oh, okay, well then that means I'm gonna have to install ad blocker AI
Flow.
into my personal AI agent to stop those kinds of ads. It's a constant back and forth along those lines. But I and I think I've mentioned this before, is as we progress and we change how we use the internet and disseminate information, websites may not even need to exist, like in general, right? The way that we use it right now is, oh, here is a central repository or landing page or entry point to learn about X, Y, or Z, right? We don't need that kind of website anymore for information. That's what ChatGPT is for. I can, or Claude or whatever, I can just go and get the actual information I need because it's gathered all that information and then helps curate it and whatnot. Now, you may need a site for verifications, like, oh, I want to click on the link. But like you said, Beth, how deep is everyone's links going? But the other thing is, I think it comes down to, if it is a entry point for purchase, if you want to buy a service or you want to buy a product or whatnot, what's going to cut down the extra steps for that? And I think that's where websites don't even need to exist until they're requested, right? I want that red shoe from Nike. So Nike will spin up the interface that allows you to go buy that red shoe, or it'll spin up the interface so that you can talk with the Nike or agent to agent, talking with the Nike group, and whatever method of purchasing that shoe, shortening the gap. That's one of the big things that Amazon really tied into, especially with their mobile app. So when you say, how many devices, like Carl, when you were mentioning like how many devices people have and whatnot, right? That's limited, but everyone's got a phone, right? And so that's already changed the experience. Brian, you said your daughter's like on TikTok and getting, or, recommendations for TikTok. And that's a primary influence. That's a primary entry point for whatever that product is, right?
Sure.
And we've already seen changes in advertising and influencing via AI through all of those markets. So I think for SEO, this is just it's a familiar term that we need to apply to multiple different avenues or different points of contact, because just having SEO for bringing up a website isn't that important anymore. And I think as AI progresses and we move away from the human doing the clicking and the searching and looking at the list of links and deciding the relevancy to them, oh, yeah, that little blurb sounds more like what I'm looking for than the other thing, then as we move away from that further and further, as AI becomes more and more dialed into us, we won't use it that way. We won't use port 80 and the web protocol in that fashion anymore.
But you just took the black box of AI and, like, buried it. Right? Like, at least with with the black box of AI, you could go to a site and see, like, what it was seeing on the site. Like, there is, I don't know, that's an objective site, but, versus a subjective site, a site that was spun up just for me based on the question that I just asked. Um, uh, like, that's a little that's a little alarming, for me in general, I would say, because there's, how do you test how do you discern that it's an improper influence if it only exists in the presence of the person it's influencing and then goes away? Like, there's no, no.
The
Sorry.
Yeah, the alignment question on that is you need to be aware, absolutely. Now, do I think it's likely that it's going that way?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it is, because what the concern is, does the user get what they want, right? Is that itch scratched? And does the seller get what they want? Something purchased. If that becomes shortened and shortened and shortened between the two, that's the way it's gonna go, unless we have larger discussions about alignment and systemic changes, for sure. But that's where that goes. It's like the user just wants it now, and the seller wants to sell as much as possible, right? If unless those two facts change, I think that's
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Jensen Huang said a while ago when he was talking to, I think it was when he was talking to Cleo Abrams on her show, on her podcast, or her YouTube channel, I should say. She has one called Huge If True, and it's named after her, but then she also has huge conversations. And I think it was in that conversation, and I might be wrong on that, but he was just talking about how it's the I hate to use this term, but the Jarvisification of AI. Anyway, his point was stop thinking about this AI help being somewhere and start thinking about it being everywhere. And that the same intelligence, the same AI intelligence that you have, that you're sitting at your desk, moves with you and transfers to your glasses, or moves with you and is now a voice activated system in my kitchen, or moves with me now is in a projection in my garage for something I do. And so this idea of, is it really search engine optimization, or is it something like AIAO, AI agent optimization, right? Is it something more like that? Because the idea, to your point, Jimmy, is the way I see it too. If I've got my regular glasses on, if I have these glasses on, and I just happen to be outside working on my car, one of my cars, and I'm like, taillight's blown. All right, pain point, taillight's blown. Need a new bulb for the taillight. What do I need to know immediately? What car, what model, what year? Sometimes what make, what trim level is going to affect what literal bulb goes in this thing. Second problem I have, I don't have a tail light. How quickly can I get this tail light? So now I have two pain points, and regardless of what this future SEO looks like, it's really going to be, to your point, Jimmy, about how fast can my pains be solved? How quickly can the right person make a sale? So in the future, that could very much look like, hey, whoever, right? On my glasses, um, I'm looking at this taillight. Here's the bulb. Kind of like you could do with ChatGPT right now. What's two or three cost options I have here, and what's like, is there overnight shipping on any of this, or even do I have like later this afternoon delivery from Amazon or something? And it's like, well, it'll cost you $3 extra for the bulb. The bulb is only $3, but it's going to cost you six. But you can get it in the next couple hours. I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, it's already disassembled. That would be amazing if I didn't have to put it back together just to wait for the bulb to show up or go to some store to get it, to AutoZone or whatever. I will just leave it disassembled and the bulb will come to me. Problem solved for everybody. Amazon gets the deal, the part manufacturer gets the deal, I get that. And so that works really, really nice if you think about that. But the idea that I would move through my space, through my world, like he was saying, that really opened up my eye to stop thinking about this happening at a location on your phone or on your computer screen, and start thinking about solving problems ubiquitously across your entire existence, right? And how you interact in different places. And so it very well may be that you walk into your grocery store and you are seeing heads up displays that nobody else can see, that are completely tailored to me because it knows my purchase history and it knows that I may care that there's a BOGO on something, and it's tailored to the way I do that. And I don't know the answer, Beth, on your end of it is, wait, hold on a second. Doesn't that suck if they're only going to show me the BOGOs on the stuff I already buy? How does the next great cookie company, or shampoo company compete? If everything is always tailored to me, is that any better than what we have on social media right now, where it gets to be a bit of groupthink and I only have to look at the stuff that I already agree with? And God help me if I have to disagree, or somebody disagrees with me, shut it down, block that person, right? That's the problem we have right now with social media, is nobody wants to be wrong, and they don't have to be. I can just get a whole feed of things that tell me I'm right all the time. So how do you compete in that? How do you get a competitive advantage? How do you be the new kid on the block? Unless it's going to go through some sort of ad system where they're competitively putting out these virtual ads so that shampoo does show up in the right place when I walk into the grocery store or whatever. And that's
Well,
just one example.
so this is sort of the I'm going to say the age old wisdom, which of course it's not the age old wisdom because the world that we live in was not existing forever. But the idea that if it's free, you're the product. Right? If the
Mhm.
glasses cost me $50, I am still the product, right? Like,
Right.
the
I'm
glasses,
subsidized in some
right?
way.
I mean, that's like the cell phone subsidy from the connection company, and and I'm just not sure that we're at that kind of place with any understanding, right? There are still people who feel that they're not the product on Facebook. You're totally the product. We can see them selling your data to the people you're going to buy from. Like it's a clear laid out path. We could literally document each step. And with this, we're not going to be able to do that. Tune me. Like,
Well, yeah, these are it's all great insights, because what does this actually inevitably lead to? If what, like I pointed out and we pointed out, if that is the trend, what is the ideal solution, right? Or what is the ideal result of that? And I think that goes back to something that we have been talking off and on about for a while now. When this will really spark in all instances or all fields, I'm not exactly sure. But with the flood of this personalization AI, with the flood of getting the experience as quick or as shortened as possible with less steps involved, that means information and availability are on hand at any point in time, right? And so people will be looking to cut through that noise. People will be going towards or turning towards the I want something different or I want something new. I'm sure there'll be a large portion of people who will, just stay within what they're comfortable with. But this goes back to the interaction. It goes back to the human to human contact, right? We've foreseen that live events will be more important, and the trend seems to go that way. More cases where people with other people, those kinds of interactions face to face or in the same space are going to be more relevant and preferred. So, because everything else in the life can be completely automated, all AI agents can handle all of that other stuff. We don't have to pay attention to that stuff because it's always going to get the thing that we need, if we need something. But it'll be the human interactions. It'll be the people going out to events. It'll be the people, whether that be a business event or a concert or a festival or any of these kinds of things, right? I bet you there'll be a huge uptick in the swap meet, right? This is going out to, seasonal events, things like that, because that's what people will crave more because they don't get that every other second of the day.
But
So
now we're
there'll be more value there.
right. Now we're going back to what Brian was talking about in terms of his child, right? Because I can look on the TikTok, maybe there's a live, we're doing an unboxing of the dresses that I just bought, and I'm trying them on and I'm giving feedback about them. So we know when we're looking at TikTok that this is sponsored content,
Sometimes, yeah.
right?
They have to say it is. Yeah, that's what.
They have to like, that's part of it. We don't know that so it says that it is sponsored content as though that's, sufficient information to give you knowledge in order to make this decision. You don't know that the reason that it was shown to you in this is because you just spent 10 minutes watching monkey videos, and
Mhm.
your purchase pattern shows that when you hang out with the monkey videos, you are much more likely to
Right.
purchase something that
Yes.
makes you feel good. So that's why this live came across your feed. Like like thinking that we're revealing that the sponsor thing is happening, but we're not actually revealing any of the optimization that's designed to get you to do what TikTok wants you to do, which is purchase.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't know. I mean, I think everything you guys are saying, and Carl too who had a jump for a little bit. I like it all makes sense to me. And I guess, as we sort of wrap up, I kind of know what my answer would be, but for anybody listening to this who's like, okay, I've listened to your guys' conversation here, and like, all right, I'm a business. I have a small business, a daily AI show, whatever. How should the daily AI show approach SEO if we're seeing this change, and I think that's maybe start with us. And so like we have the Daily Eye Show, but we also have an LLC that's aside from the Daily Eye Show so that we can work with people, work with other clients and stuff like that. So on either side of that, you know, what is the right answer? To me, and I'd love to go around the room and just find out really quick. Carl, you jump back with us, but just really quick as we wrap up today. Like to me, the answer seems as of right now to still be the same descriptive, answers, long tail, good information, quality information on your website. Obviously going and diversifying through like we use this, daily free podcasts, right? That we host every day and we don't charge for that or anything. And that could be considered one form of marketing, if you will, for getting our names out there and whatever. So we're using other ways. Other people use TikTok. Other people like Celsius brand, and to your point, Jimmy is at every festival and just hands out 1,000 cans of Celsius and goes, "Well, I know you're going to drink it, and I'm just trying to get you as a long-term customer." Like because you might buy the next one at your Publix or whatever your local grocery store is. So to me, I don't think anything has really changed from the SEO. Yes, like Carl is actively building in these areas, but I think the answer still right now is build the best version of your site. You might not always have people on that site, but for now, the snippets, the keywords, the like building for that and just really, really, really focusing on quality, not necessarily quantity, but just quality is still going to give you your best chances with SEO. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
so. All right. I, so my view on this is more of a applied. If you want to look for an applied method, you can do right now. If you're wondering how to improve your SEO for AI, and may not be super relevant now because AI awareness and AI use, while it's growing by leaps and bounds, is still not overtaking, other methods or traditional methods. But I would just use every model you can get your hands on and question it about who your customer, right? Take your customer profile, who's your ideal customer, figure out, take that and plug in all of the relevant questions that everyone who does buy your product or wants to buy your product or buys it from a competitor, and plug that into those models and see what is the responses, how they respond, and what are the key, and then analyze those responses, probably with another model, and extract what are the things that those models are responding with. What are the bullet points? What are the key takeaways? What is all the descriptive text and keywords and things like that? Take that out and make sure that your site has this information. Include your backlinks, all of the SEO, standard SEO stuff. But this way, when people are using AI models to look for looking for your product or a kind of product, similar product. You can draw based upon their responses, especially when you can see their reasoning, and take that and use that to influence your landing pages, your entry points, and things like that. That can be set up as an automation really easily. That's a task that can be repeatable and then just upgrades your site every so often. That's probably the easiest application you can use by using AI to better influence AI searches.
Make sense, Carl?
So, um, having been done SEO type activities for the past like over a decade, I think like the key thing for me, and if you actually look at having spent a whole bunch of time, like I like the past 3, 4 years into this, when you actually see how did people hear about your business and after they want to work with us. So let's say work with specific our group. It's not usually through SEO. It's through, oh, um, either I saw your show, I heard your clip, I heard your podcast. So it's one of those things where we have essentially become top of mind for
Mhm.
people, right? But that takes time, and that's also from either word of mouth as well. This is usually the biggest piece is word of mouth, referrals. It's least likely SEO, something that you can't track, right? Some people would take clips from our show and post it into a Slack channel, or they'd save, bookmark, or something, our show, or they've seen it multiple times. So you can't it's gonna be hard to track the SEO portion of that. So I think there's a big shift if we look at voice SEO, the impact of large language models, or how the search is changing into different platforms. The big thing is how do we get and maintain top of mind so when people are ready to have their problem solved, we're up there. That's to me the biggest piece.
Mhm.
So SEO has never SEO is more of like just a part of that whole journey. And I think everywhere I've gone that has successful like a content program like this, these kind of things are successful if done properly because then you're top of mind when those companies or people are ready for your solution. So
Yep.
I don't even think of the SEO. Sometimes I might think about it from a YouTube perspective because it's actually easier, in my opinion, to get on YouTube SEO than it is on just Google SEO.
Mhm.
But all the things that we're doing, it's more of a brand, not brand awareness, but also, hey, this company can solve my problem.
Right.
That would be the focus of that.
Beth, you want to take us home?
Absolutely, and I do think for this show, the people who are diehard, watchers, thanks all for showing up in the chat. We do hear from them. We wanna know what you think about this, right? So when a big thing happens, we know that we're gonna get asked about it in the chat the next day,
Mhm.
and we'll be covering, the big thing that happened, this weekend, tomorrow on the news show. And I'm glad we didn't cover it during the weekend because the Magnus Manus story, has shifted as as the day has gone on. Like it's a whole like mini series in
Yeah.
just a couple days. The other thing that I want to say is that the Sci-Fi AI show this week, which is at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, is adjacent to this conversation. The idea of the omnipresent disembodied voice is something that happens a lot in sci-fi, and so we're going to talk about that. And that's my take it home. I'm curious if I would love to hear from people about their experiences in like talking to voice about solving problems and shopping or not shopping, right? Like just the I like what Carl said about solving the problems.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. That's it, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for the news. Thursday, we have a cool show for you. We have a guest co-host. We are not going to say who, but you can go try to figure it out on the interwebs and social and see if you can work it out. So we're really excited about that. And then we'll be back on Friday. I didn't have Friday in front of me. Oh, our Be About It show. Yeah, Friday. Friday's going to be a fun show too. That one comes directly off of a cool LinkedIn post that came out about a week or two ago. So that's it. That's the rest of the week. Have a great one, and we will see you tomorrow for all the news. Bye.
Aloha.